As we go through this list of art supplies, I want to be clear that not all of these purchases are regrets necessarily, and they certainly aren't bad products. Rather, they're just things that I realized after making the purchase that I didn't actually need. I could have saved my money, and I would have been perfectly fine without. Number 1 on my list, the Gelli plate. And I know I'm going to get some hate from the Gelli plate community, but just hear me out. Let's say I have a bit of free time in the afternoon. I can easily grab a sketchbook and a pen or a pencil and draw for a short time. But the Gelli plate isn't something you can just reach for when you have a few minutes to spare. I feel like I have to take over every square inch of my table, gathering paints, stencils, and stamps from far and wide. And basically everything I might want to use, I must have at my fingertips. Oh, and did I mention that I'll need a block of at least 3 to 4 hours uninterrupted, or else why bother? Yeah, sometimes I can be a little bit all or nothing. Surprising to hear from a Libra, I know. But honestly, I do love the Gelli plate, and I know I'll find more time to use it and enjoy it eventually. But for now, as it rests on a shelf, not forgotten, but barely used, it falls under the category of unnecessary art purchases. Number 2, watercolor pencils. Now, I have no beef with watercolor pencils, but I just don't find myself dreaming about making art with watercolor pencils in the same way that I dream about traditional watercolors and so many other mediums. And I think too, because I already own colored pencils and watercolor paints, I feel like these two products already allow me to accomplish a similar effect. So watercolor pencils are maybe just overkill. They feel somewhat redundant to me, rather than filling an important gap. Luckily, I only have this one small set purchased at a garage sale, and so I'm only really out a few bucks. Now, if you disagree and think I should explore them further, or at least give them more of a chance, please let me know. What do you like to use watercolor pencils for? Is there some amazing way to use them that I'm just missing? Number 3, gouache. I watched a video a while back with an artist who swears by gouache. Of course, she made it look so easy and wonderful, pointing out all of the things that gouache can do that regular watercolors cannot. So, after letting them simmer in my online cart for at least a month, I had to try them out for myself. And they were cool. I was impressed by the bright colors, and I made a couple mini paintings that I really liked. But after that first week, I barely touched them. I know I will get back to them, and I think they'll come in handy for very specific purposes. But they just don't excite me in the same way that traditional watercolors do. Now they are of course thicker, so maybe I should experiment with larger amounts of water to see if I can get more of that flow that you get with standard watercolor paints. Also, I really like to mix watercolors directly on paper, and I found that when mixing gouache, it seems like you need to mix the paints together really well. I just don't find the colors appealing when barely blended. They look kind of muddy until they get a really good blend going on. Has anyone else noticed this to be the case when color mixing with gouache? Or is it just a me problem? On to number 4, Schmincke Super Granulation Watercolors. Now, I tested these paints with a sample dot card, and I actually have a whole playlist dedicated to them. I'll link it up here as well as in the video description if you're interested. So anyway, I had so much fun making my way through an entire sketchbook with these really cool paints. And after much deliberation, I treated myself to an entire set of super granulating paints. They're great quality, and if you aren't familiar with granulating watercolors, I'd encourage you to watch my playlist because the textures are amazing and so much fun to play with. But I still tend to stick with my original watercolor palette, which surprisingly is comprised of mainly student-grade watercolors that were a fraction of the price of my new paints. I guess I'm just more comfortable with my old palette. And I don't want to say that I regret buying the Schmincke set? Because I really don't. But sometimes when I think about the cost and how often I use them, I have to admit that they were a frivolous purchase, and they fall under the category of art supplies I didn't need to buy. Number 5, watercolor powders. When I bought these, I had high hopes. I bought a 3-pack, and I was especially excited about the sepia option. I pictured a couple different things. So first, I thought that I'd be able to use them to make a background for my images, to create kind of like an old photo look with the browns and reds, and then maybe do a drawing in black ink so it would stand out. I don't know, it sounded cool in my head. The second thing I wanted to try was using them for a splatter-like effect on my watercolor paintings. Well, despite what the name sepia might suggest, the powder consists of super bright rainbow colors, and I just didn't care for the look at all, at least not for the 2 uses that I had wanted them for, so that was kind of a bust. Now, I have used the powders a handful of times for making cards and a couple of junk journal pages, and I've also tried working with stencils with them. I'll link a video above right here. I did get some decent results, but it wasn't very consistent, and it wasn't at all what I had in mind when I bought them. So it's like I was seeking out uses to use them instead of filling a need. And for that reason, they've made the list of art supplies that I should have thought twice about before purchasing. Number 6, last but not least, Posca markers. I went back and forth on whether or not to add these to the list, because I want to love these markers. I truly do. I mean, look at these gorgeous colors. But here's my problem. I don't really know how to use them other than for these scribble flowers. And don't get me wrong, these are so much fun to draw, but I could have just as easily used colored pencils, watercolors, or nearly any other product from my collection for that pop of color that I was going for. And almost every time that I try a subject other than flowers or plants, I have been so disappointed in my results. I think of myself as more of a timid artist. I create muted, subtle artwork, but these markers are bold. I'd like to be bold and fearless, but I'm not there yet. And surprisingly, there's not a whole lot out there on creating with Posca markers. I searched YouTube and Pinterest, but only found comic-style, cartoonish drawings. And while the artists were very talented, it just wasn't my style at all. So for now, I'm doodling with these markers occasionally, trying to get a feel for how to best use them, but I'm not doing anything that resonates with me. I just don't know how to approach the art that I'd like to make with a Posca marker in my hand. All right, so to recap, the 6 art supplies I probably could have skipped are Gelli plates, watercolor pencils, gouache, a full set of super granulation watercolors, watercolor powders, and Posca markers. So my advice would be, before you make your next purchase, ask yourself, will this item fill a need or will it be redundant? Do I already own a product that can do this job? Also, ask yourself if you have enough time and flexibility to use this new product. Some products and mediums are more of a time commitment than others. I know that if I'd considered these questions, I would have held off on a few of my purchases. Just something to consider. So, what about you? Have you made a few purchases that you really didn't need to? Let me know below, and thank you for watching.